In the next two videos, we're going to create this Smokestack motion graphic file. We'll begin by creating the document file. It's going to measure 7 inches wide by 9 inches high, and the resolution is going to be 100. Next, I'll put the colors that I want for the background. With my color picker, I'm going to make the background the green, 172 for red, green 211, and blue 115. I'll hit Option Delete, or I'll use my paint bucket tool. And now I'm going to sample out and put a bit of an orange down at the bottom. I'm going to use my brush for this, and I'm going to use the blend mode for the brush dissolve. And I'm starting out with an opacity of 50%. And I'll go ahead and drag across, and then I'm going to work my way down and build up a little bit more of the orange. Next, I'm going to open up the Smokestack file that was provided and edit it and put it into the background. To edit out the Smokestack, I'm going to hit W on the keyboard, and I'm going to choose the Object Selection tool, and I'll click on the tower. That does a pretty good job, so I'll hit Command C to copy, and I'll put it in our file. And next I want to edit out the watermarks. I'm going to put in a protective layer, and I'll hit J on the keyboard. And that's the healing brush, which has a built-in value sensor, which means it'll blend it in pretty nicely if I click on this. Now I've also set it for sample all layers, which means it's going to go down through the protective layer and put it on top of the new one. So I'll just take a moment to go in and get rid of those. And then I'm going to use my rubber stamp tool to get rid of the A's in the dark values, because there's really not enough content to sample with the healing brush to accomplish that. I'll go ahead and I'll hit S on the keyboard, and I'm going to make a selection of the tower so that the clone that I create does not go outside the perimeter of the actual tower. So I'll hold down the Command key, and I'll click on the thumbnail of the tower, and I'll get the margin ends. And it's also that the layer that I'm using to correct is selected. So now I'll hit S on the keyboard, and I'll make the stamp tool pretty small because I want to sample some of the dark value that exists up in this corner where this A happens to be. Holding the Option, I'll click, I'll let go, and now I'll go over and start to cover up that A. And I'm just going to do this very gradually. And then I'll go over and do the same for the other one. And I'll deselect, I'll save, and I'm going to merge that down. To merge the layers down, I'll go to the waffle in the right-hand corner of the layer window. I'll click on it and choose Merge Down. I'm going to name it, and then I'm going to move the tower halfway down. I'll rotate it a bit so it's a little straighter. And next I'm going to put a filter on it so it looks more graphic. With the tower layer selected, I'm going to right-click and choose Convert to Smart Object. And then I'm going to go to Filter, and I'm going to click on Filter Gallery. I'll click on Poster Edges, and then I'll play with the settings in the right-hand corner. Once I have what I want, I'll click OK, and then I'll right-click and choose Rasterize Layer. Next, we're going to create the smoke. I'm going to create a file that's 7.5 inches wide by 17 inches high. And now I'm going to hit D on the keyboard, and that will set the default black and white on my toolbar. And I'll just fill this with black. Option Delete or Paint Bucket. I'm now going to go to Filter, Render, Difference, Clouds. And I'll have this cloud effect, and I'm going to just play with this a little more to get it a little grungier. So I would do that by simply going to Filter and clicking on Difference Clouds at the top. It memorizes the filter that was used. So all I have to do is click on that, or I could hold down Control Command and hit F on the keyboard to get variations. So I'm looking for one that's got a lot of white value in it, but it's a little gnarly. Now I want this to have kind of a purple look. Put a fresh layer into my layer window, and then I'm going to go to my swatches. I'll start with a purple. I'll click on my color picker. I want it to be a little deeper purple, so I'll click to add a little bit more value to it. And in this instance, I'm going to use a red of 135, green 82, blue 193. And I'll fill that new layer with that purple, Option Delete or Paint Bucket. Now I'll play with the blend modes. I'll click on normal. I'll drag down over the options. I'm looking for one that will maintain the values that are in there. So I'm going to go with soft light, and I'd like this to be one single layer because we're going to copy and paste it into the tower layer. Looking at the finished file, you can see there's a bit of a noise at the top where it begins rather than a straight line. So to do that, I'll go to the file we've just created. I'll merge the layer down with the background layer. I'll double click on the layer window, and now I'll put a layer mask on it. I'll hit B on the keyboard, and I'm going to set my brush hardness to 0. I'll set the brush mode to dissolve, and maybe 50%, and then I'll go in across the top. And once I've done that, I'm going to put the brush opacity back up to 100%, and I want to clean that top edge completely. I don't want any kind of an edge there at all. Now once I have what I want, I'll make a selection of it, and I'll go to Edit, Copy, Merge, or Command-Shift-C on the keyboard, and then I'll paste it into the file with the tower, selecting the background layer, and hitting Command-V. The last thing we need to do now before we start the motion graphic animation is to define the shape we would like for the plume to be. I'll hit L on the keyboard, and I'll choose my regular lasso tool. And I think what I'll do is I'll just move this up a bit so I see all of it is purple. And with my lasso tool now, I'm going to make a jagged selection. And once I have the selection I want, I'll right-click inside with the selection tool, and I'll choose Feather. And maybe I'll put a feather of 10, click OK, and then I'll click on the layer mask icon at the bottom of the layer window. And now we're ready to do the animation.